Welcome back to another video and another battle report, folks. We're back in Stalingrad again, or as this series of battles really represents, is the fighting up to Stalingrad. I've mentioned it in previous videos, but if you want to watch Tick's series on Stalingrad, that's TIK on YouTube, he explains that the previous narrative of the Germans thinking the war was already won all the way up to Stalingrad and getting such a terrible fright when they got there isn't strictly true. They were really fierce battles on the way to Stalingrad. Lots of losses on both sides, delays in the Germans getting there and ultimately getting there without enough strength to take the city on the run. So we're just playing those kind of games, like poorly trained Soviet forces up against less numerous German forces. We've had 3 games now. We're using Cross of Iron and Enemy at the Gates. We're using Soviet conscripts from those books, not the Soviet hero list at all. We want to see how the really poor quality troops go. And the first 2 games that you may have seen, the infantry conscript tanks got absolutely smacked sideways by a dug-in German veteran grenadier company. The third game was dust up and it ended up very close to a Soviet victory, but ended up as a draw. So this game that we're going to play is Killing Ground. So the Soviet conscripts are defending. So we'll see how they do in a defensive situation, and we'll see if the Germans can, with a tank force, a tank company, can dig them out of their foxholes. So over to the game. Hope you enjoy it, and I'll come back for a recap at the end. So the mission is Killing Ground, named for the deployment zone of the defender. The attacker's in a box. It's quite a big box and it's quite far forward, but it is still excuse me, still just a box where they can potentially be struck from all sides. Ambushes, for instance, can be very useful in this mission. The rules are ambush, as I said, and deep scattered delayed reserves. Nice punchy title for you there. And you can see we've got to roll the dice to see where the reserves come on for the defender. And it's also got ranged in markers, pre-ranged in markers, and some minefields. So the defence, the Soviet list that I'll be playing, we've got, first of all, that's 40 points worth of leaves in reserve. 3 76mm tank guns in ambush. And then I've not deployed anything. The ambush may get deployed on the sides, but otherwise everything is just on this back edge. I've got heavy machine gun platoon, company command I've not yet placed actually, infantry platoon, and you can see there's a ranged in marker there from the Nebs, and then we've got 6 medium mortars, 4 Katyushas, another infantry platoon, and 3 heavy mortars. Now the ranged in markers are Katyushas, heavy mortars, medium mortars. So the German list, so Brian is using a Panzer III company. He's not taking any marders. He decided he wanted to bulk up his core formation, so there's a lot of tanks here in the core formation. There's 10 Panzer IIIs, 2 platoons of 4 plus company command of 2. They're all short barrel 50s. There could be a hell of a lot of assaulting in this game. And for anti-tank work, he's got 3 Panzer IV F2s, the long barreled 75s. So they've got anti-tank 10, which should deal with delays in most occasions. Firepower 3 is going to help. And supporting them, they've got a platoon of grenadiers and the 3 Nebs. So if you saw the last game, the Soviet artillery actually did its job. The Soviet artillery could severely punish these Nebs, severely punish those Germans, but at the same time, if the Nebs are able to keep firing with their 10-inch template, they could cause a lot of damage against these massive swarms of infantry. So, Brian's got first turn. This game I'm actually going to use a turn counter because I'm forgetting the turns when I'm trying to control everything. So we'll come back at the end of German turn 1. So, German turn 1. Brian's basically dashed everything off here. He's got his infantry and his scouts heading off to reduce the likelihood of ambush along this flank, and then the tanks have just dashed over. In fact, he could have tried to follow me, so we'll do that off camera. That could just get him just a little bit further over because he wants to avoid the possibility of ambush and then take that objective in the flank, which when you look at it, it's actually quite exposed depending on where my reserves come in. So the Nebs did some shooting. They got loads and loads of hits, and most bases failed their saves, but it failed about maybe 4 up firepower, so that could have gone a lot worse for the Soviets. With the re-rolling of a 4 up save, that's pretty damaging for them. So that's the Germans' turn over, so over to the Soviets for their first turn. Soviet turn 1, as a general, get up, pick up sticks and get moving. The mortars stay still because one Neb was in range and everything else is moving off. There's a couple of possibilities for these guys, but they're certainly not, there's no threat here, so they can move back if they need to. But over here I wanted to pop my ambush and get those armour cars and just have them in position on the flank. Unfortunately the armour cars could see everything within 16 inches and there's no cover there, so I just had to place them out of line of sight basically off those armour cars, so they're protecting the flank but they're not getting the jump on anybody at all. And then I thought the Nebs, they're dangerous, I better deal with them, and every single dice didn't range in. Familiar story for these Soviet conscripts. Even the Katyushas needing a 5 didn't range in. So other than that, that's it for the Soviets. Everything else is staying gone to ground or just moving. So on to German turn 2. So German turn 2, and the tanks are massing. Got to think about what we need to do with those anti-tank guns. Brian's thinking I'm going to hold back, see if I can maybe get the artillery on them. At the moment he's kept concentrating them on these infantry that are moving up, and he got loads under the template and managed to kill 4 of them. So that's nearly half the platoon gone in 2 turns of shooting. The only other shooting there was armour cars, tried a few machine gun shots and the infantry never hit anything really. Got a couple of hits, but no impact. So over to the Soviets, see what they can do against this massive armour. Soviet turn 2, these guys are picking this all up and moving off. The mortars no longer have anything in range because these infantry have absolutely bombed it up the table. We keep forgetting how fast infantry can move now, you know, with the cross-country dash and a follow me and things. So oh dear, the Nebs got pinned, by the way. They got hit by the Katyushas, didn't take any casualties but got hit, so they're in trouble. The Germans are going to have to come give them some support. But over here the heavy mortars ranged in, managed to hit 3 tanks and 1 armoured car, but they all made their save. Well, 1 armoured car, 1 tank, sorry, was a potential bail, but the Neb failed its, the heavy mortar failed its firepower. So Brian's got some thoughts about these guys, what he's going to do, and because to be honest, I think, you know, he was hoping to be killing those anti-tank guns with the nebs. And he couldn't put the nebs any further over because that's the limit of the deployment zone. So that's a tricky one. Okay, so over to Brian's turn 3. So German turn 3. The nebs didn't unpin, and they've got a really, really slow terrain dash move, these guys. So they've edged over a little bit. That's not going to protect them against the Katyusha bombardment. But they've got to move over. These guys, Brian moved at a dash speed for some counter-fire in any charges. And then these guys moved up to get some shots on the cats, but they never rolled above a 3. And these guys have moved up, anticipating reserves, as have the Panzer IVs. The infantry dug in. So not much happened there for the Germans. They didn't really have much things they could shoot with and never hit with anything that they did. Soviet turn 3, they got no reserves. The heavy machine guns have kept moving up. The mortars stayed still to bombard. The Katyusha said, well, we're going to get shot to bits, but let's see if we can kill those nebs. These infantry edged up a little bit so they could make sure of an assault. And as far as shooting goes, the Katyushas were ranged in already and never hit. The medium mortars failed to range in. The heavy mortars did range in and got 2 hits, but they made both their saves. So all that happened over here really was these guys moved in for the assault, lost 1 base on the way in, and then they killed the neb and then consolidated. So the nebs are still miraculously alive. We'll see if Brian should be able to get them away from the infantry, but there's a lot of artillery still alive and able to hit them, and they're quite slow moving, so it'll be hard for them to get out of the template. So over to German turn 4. German turn 4. So the nebs unpinned. The armour cars moved up to protect them against the infantry, did some shooting over here, killed a base. The nebs fired at the Katyushas, ranged in but got no hits, 2 1s, and 1 is going to be the defining number for this turn, unfortunately for Brian. The tanks, the Panzer IVs, 2 of them got into firing position in the wood, took some long range shots at anti-tank guns and missed. The company HQ moved back because the re-roll for motivations could be useful in future turns, and it would have been useful in this turn. Unfortunately, this platoon of Panzer IIIs moved up in a great position for an assault. They flew in, killed a anti-tank gun in shooting, and then killed an anti-tank gun in assault, but missed the 2. Well, this one here, first of all, didn't do a cross check. There was 2 in the middle that missed the 2 bases. The Soviets motivated, counter-attacked, and then this guy rolled a 1 for a save, this guy rolled a 1 for a save, this guy saved, but then they rolled a 3 for counter-attack, had to break off, and he rolled another 1. So he got captured. Actually, Brian will have to move those guys back a bit if I never noticed him. So it was a great position, and see, the main concern here for Brian is getting within 8 inches of that objective for turn 6. So he thought, I'll go in, smash a wee hole, hopefully kill anti-tank guns, and then I can develop that. But what can you do if you roll a load of 1s, folks? Soviet turn 4, the anti-tank guns didn't unpin, the infantry did. Heavy machine guns kept moving over. I'm going to try and just put a bit of extra support or even just some extra bodies in the way. They got the reserves. They rolled a 5, so they came in over here. 16 inches of the corner, so they've got a long way to go, and it's a good job for the Germans that they did come over there, but they can get any firing range next turn, so it's tricky for the Germans. These infantry, most of them moved up a bit just to get into rifle range off the nebs. Now you can see there's quite a lot of casualties over here. The Katyusha's ranged in, as did the heavy mortars. The Katyusha's killed this, not that neb. Heavy mortars bailed that out, destroyed that, and then the infantry shot that to bits. Had 5 saves to make. So, we'll have to see what happens to them next turn, because it's not so easy to remount and last stand armour cars. And Brian has got to push on towards that objective. Got to be within 8 inches, so it's going to be tricky. It kind of went pear-shaped last turn, but we'll see. He's got a lot of assets around there, and the tanks are still a long way away. German turn 5, actually we'll start over there. The armour cars moved out of the templates, shot up a base of infantry. It's not quite over yet, but I want to build the tension. The tanks moved up again. You can see Panzer IVs have moved into position to shoot as well. They managed, combined all together, they managed to kill one of the anti-tank guns, which is good, because it's the anti-tank gun that was in range of counter-firing to an assault here. The company command plus the survivor who managed his last stand from this platoon moved in for the assault, got 3 tanks in contact, 1 hit. And then Brian's got a problem with his dice today, because he got hit and it rolls another one. And then with the company command there for a reroll for motivation, rolled a 2 and a 3. So they've broken off, but the assault's not over yet. Things are getting desperate. These guys are going to risk an attack because that is pinned, so it's a good chance. Well, it won't stop the assault, and there's a good chance if they can somehow carry it on, then they can make some headway. So can anybody guess what happened in the next assault? So 1 tank got bogged coming out the woods, the other 2 made contact, killed 1 base. Soviets motivated. It's not surprising considering they've got the company commander there with a good motivation. Came in and didn't get any hits. Oh no, they did, they got 1 hit. Brian saved, but then to motivate, even with a reroll from his company commander, he rolled a 1 and a 2. And then the bogged, the bogged Panzer III also rolled a 1 on the way out. So he got captured. Those infantry actually, I'll have to move them back. Apologies for the picture, the quality of the picture. Guys, believe it or not, the sun's too bright in Scotland today. I don't think that's something you ever thought you'd hear me say, but there you go. So that ends Brian's turn. He has at least got a couple of bases within 8 inches of the objective, but he's running out of manoeuvring space and assets. So this will be Soviet turn 5. What can I say? So we'll start over here. These guys fired at the armoured cars, got a few hits, 1 failed save, but no, so 1 potential bail, but no firepower. The Lees, that's the thing about Lees, they don't have, the main gun anyway, doesn't have the slow firing rule. So they rolled up in the front 4 at short range, got 3 hits on the company command, and killed 1, bailed 1. The other ones did some shooting and missed, and then the artillery shifted the fire over to the edge of the wood. The medium mortars actually ranged in first time, got a few hits, but they all made a save, and the other artillery did not range in. The anti-tank gun, actually, you know what, I forgot to do a last stand on that. Let's see, it rolls a 1, so it's gone anyway. But it missed. It didn't unpin. But at the start of turn 6, for the Germans, the company command's no longer active. Check victory conditions first, so I would do a quick double check myself, make sure it's at the end of turn 6 or the start of turn 6 for the attacker or for the defender, and we'll see if there is going to be some more action, because I think Brian probably wants to come around this side. He's not having any luck, and he's got a wood to go through and a pile of wrecked tanks to go through on that side, but we'll see if I'm coming back for another turn or a recap. So, German turn 6, they do get a turn 6. The victory conditions, the 8 inches within an objective is for the defender's turn. So, if everything had gone badly wrong in this turn, the defenders could have won. As it is though, it didn't go badly wrong. It went quite well. I'll start with the armour cars. They are just pinging away at those infantry and killed another base. Panzer IVs moved into position to get some shots over here. Didn't get many dice because they had to do a bit of moving. Didn't get any hits. The Panzer III's positioned to come in from the side, and with the company commander coming in from the front, but staying within motivation range at critical assault points. The infantry moved up to support. So then Brian managed to kill the heavy machine gun platoon, because that would have been very useful if he did have to use his backup assault option, which is infantry. But he didn't need it, because as it was, the tanks came in. They didn't really. There's a lot of bases there, but it took quite a few turns of assault to kill them. He rolled a lot of 1s and 2s when he was rolling to hit. But critically, the Soviets actually failed to motivate, even with a reroll for the company command, who's not happy at all. Heads will roll. And then some more Soviets actually got captured because they could only move the guys out who were forced to break off, and there wasn't enough space for everybody to move into, so they captured another couple of bases. So they shot up 3 bases before the attack, killed 4 bases in the assault, and then captured another couple of bases. So it's back game on again for the Germans. Soviet turn 6, and they've probably bought themselves a bit of time now because they've got tanks up close that can probably give some counter fire support if they're still alive. In terms of anything else, these guys managed to dig in again. The mortars didn't, because they fired. The Germans can't really catch much of a break now, because the light mortars and the medium mortars both managed to range in. Or so the medium mortars and the Katyushas managed to range in. Katyushas had to aim quite far away though, because of the safe distance rule. But the German infantry lost 3 bases. As far as other shooting goes, there was some firing at the Panzer IVs. Most of the firing was at the Panzer IIIs, but only 1 bale. So, German turn 7. Oh, and over there, they're still having an argument with those armour cars. So, over to German turn 7. So, German turn 7. Brian tried to unpin the infantry and didn't. He tried to dig them in, but I think it probably would have been better just to make them run away. Because as it is, they didn't dig in. And as far as shooting goes, it wasn't very effective, to be honest. The Panzer IVs only got 1 hit, and it only turned out to be a bale. The Panzer IIIs got several hits, but the gun's only at tank 8, and they managed to double bale and then destroy this one here and then bale another one. So it's going to be a bit of a Mexican standoff, a bit of shooting for a couple of turns, I reckon. Let's see what I can do back. So some effective shooting by the Lees, followed up by a cheeky little shooting scoop, rolled a 6. They managed to kill 2 Panzer IIIs, and infantry paid the price of not moving. They've been absolutely clobbered, so they're effectively gone. I think Brian just forgot about it, we just concentrating too much on the tanks. So, let's see what Brian can do this turn. He actually blitzed, we've got to do it, I mean, shooting scooted the Panzer IVs out of the way to try and get them over. But there's just too many Lees, I think. But we'll see what happens next turn. Turn 8, I think it is. The Panzer III here passed its last stand. Then in terms of shooting, they got 5 hits from the Panzer IVs, and it's unbelievable. I rolled a bucket load of 6s and 5s and 4s for saves, so the worst that could happen was a bail, and Brian failed his firepowers. The Panzer IIIs, all they managed to do was destroy one of the bailed out Lees, and then they shooted and scooted behind here. They tried to shoot and scoot, but it didn't. Why the lone infantryman's moved over there for the sake of his health. So it's looking grim for the Germans, only just within 8 inches of that objective. Soviet turn 8. Well, what can I say? These 2 Lees here at the front fired at short range, looking for 5s, got 3 5s and a 6. And even hit with one of the 37mm, just to add insult to injury. And then artillery all ranged in here as well, killed the last surviving infantryman. But basically those 2 tanks got clobbered, failed their saves, and are dead, and that's the end of the game. So, in recap then, let me see, first of all, Soviet losses: they lost anti-tank guns, they lost heavy machine guns. Otherwise, everything else was intact. But I have to say, that game really just came down to Brian's stinking luck. I've never seen so many 1s and 2s rolled in an assault. Why does it always happen in an assault, you know? For 2 turns in a row. If he'd have been able to get that assault in here, he could have got himself a foothold in here. He could have been chewing up and capturing bases and mortars and such likes, as we saw when the Soviets did actually have to break off, and he would have been in a much better position for when the tanks did arrive. Obviously the tanks could have arrived right in that corner and that would have changed everything right off. But it was just terrible luck. I mean, I can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of those Panzer IIIs were lost in assault as a result of breaking off. And 5 of them were lost to shooting subsequently. But there you go, the Conscripts managed to hold on. I think it would have been better in a different mission if the Nebs had been out of the way. They were in a fairly exposed position and took a battering from artillery, from infantry and so on. You need the Nebs to soften up a big lump like this. You need some kind of artillery to help you out. I think that's probably the main lesson for tanks taking on these conscript armies. And they just couldn't do it in this case because of the mission, I think. If they'd been able to soften it up and got some fairly normal dice rolls, it would have been a different story. But there you go. So, there you go folks, the Conscripts have finally got a victory. It was a close run thing. You know, the dice rolling that Brian did in his saving throws and his motivations in the assaults from those Panzer IIIs were pretty bad, I have to say. The Nebs getting taken out of the game fairly early doors meant that things couldn't get softened up. But the deployment zone for the attacker in that game is very constricted. You know, you don't have the full width of the table, you're kind of squeezed in. So when we looked at it afterwards, we kind of thought Brian maybe could have brought his armour cars back one turn sooner to defend the Nebs, but we didn't really think they were going to be under threat. But he could have brought them back one turn sooner instead of taking a turn shooting at dug-in infantry. He perhaps could have left the Panzer IVs back as a reserve, but you know, he was worried that my reserves, my tanks, were going to come in on that corner, and 16 inches off the corner, being at scattered reserves. So, you know, it's all good hindsight, but I think it was really just down to where the Nebs were deployed in the game and the fact they couldn't deploy anywhere else. Looking at Brian's lists, he's thinking to himself, do I want to spend 40 points on 4 Panzer IVs in the future? Maybe the tanks would do just as well with the Marders and spending what would it be now? 4 Marders, what's 4 Marders, 16 points, is it? You might have 24 points to spend on other things, you know, more support. You could get an entire infantry company there, possibly with mortars as well. I think 20, just about get entire company with mortars, or you could just build up more artillery. You know, get some 10.5 centimeters, things like that, and that would help a tank company dealing with a dug-in force without taking too much away from their anti-tank capability, because they've still got 4 Marders. And as far as the Soviet conscripts go, well, the list is pretty much it's what it needs to be for me anyway. The Lees are proving to be more useful than T-34s just now, because they can move up and shoot without a penalty. They can come on from reserve and shoot without a penalty. T-34s can't do that. So I'm quite happy with Lees as a single platoon of tank support for the conscripts. But there you go, folks. The conscripts have got a win. Yay! I'm not completely useless, or maybe it means I'm not completely useless. But you be the judge of that. We've got another one lined up. This time we're going to go back to conscript tanks against veteran tanks, and we shall see how that goes. So stay tuned and keep your eye out for that next, folks.